cannot command me. Speak, friend. McGraw. Be safe. What do you need? For the Horde.
is money, friend! Glad I could help.
What are you looking for? Victory!
Well met. Be careful.
Blood and thunder. Go for it. What happened? say.
strength, and honor.
Strength and honor. For the Horde. You cannot command me.
We're moving into Phase 4 Season of Discovery, or maybe you're even watching this video after Phase 4 already dropped. Well, in this video, I'm going to go over my top 10 favorite add-ons that I think all players should be using in Season of Discovery. These add-ons are all available on CurseForge with the CurseForge app, or if you like to download them manually. They will enhance your gameplay and make sure that you have the smoothest possible experience. So without further ado, let's jump into my top 10 favorite add-ons for Season of Discovery. So for number 1, I want to talk to you guys about an add-on called Attune. Now, a lot of you may already know about this, but for the people who don't, this add-on is going to change your life. As you probably already know, that heading into Phase 4 Season of Discovery, we're going to have some attunements coming up for Molten Core, for Onyxia's Lair, which is a pretty lengthy attunement, and even simple things like getting the key for Blackrock Depths or Blackrock Spire. So what you're going to do is install Attune, and then up here, I have the Attune add-on right here. This is the mini-map button. We're going to open it, and inside Attune, you can see on the left-hand side, we have our raids, Molten Core, Oni, Blackwing Lair, Naxxramas. We have our miscellaneous ones like the Aquil Quintessence, which is to basically get attuned to gain your douses, to douse the runes in Molten Core. We have the Scepter of the Shifting Sands one. We have the keys for Blackrock Depths and Skolomance. So for starters, we'll just take a look at the Onyxia's Lair one here, and it's going to show you step by step how to get attuned for Oni. Now this is a pretty lengthy attune if you can take a look here. So having this add-on and being able to track exactly what your next step is massive, and I think everyone should be using this add-on going into Phase 4. So the next add-on I want to talk to you guys about is going to be Extended Character Stats, right? You can see it right here. I have it installed, Extended Character Stats v3.3.3. What this add-on does is when you open up your character panel, you're going to get this little button that says ECS. It'll stay open if you leave it open when you close your panel, so we're just going to leave it open, and it shows you every single stat for your character. Super, super detailed. Right now I'm mounted up, so it's showing that our movement speed is 165%. It shows us our attack power, our crit chance, our hit chance, our miss percentage on mobs that are 3 levels higher than us, so basically on bosses right now in Molten Core, I would have a 1.7% chance to miss, our glancing blow chance, the damage from glancing blow, our attack speed, it shows us our range stats, all of our defensive stats right here if you're tanking, your mana stats, your spell stats, hit, spell power, shows you each individual spell power, crit chance, and damage. This add-on is absolutely essential, and if you aren't already using Extended Character Stats, definitely go ahead and download it. The next add-on I want to talk to you guys about is going to be called Boon Best in Slot, and as you can see see right here I have it installed, Loon Best in Slot, so you can see the exact name of it. We're going to open that add-on up when we come up to my buttons here. Loon Best in Slot. So I'm playing Warrior DPS, and we're in Phase 3. I want it set to my BIS, and every single slot I want shown, it's going to show you exactly what your BIS item is and where to get it on the right-hand side. And once you've acquired that item, it's going to put this big green check mark on the right-hand side. Now, just to show you guys that you can check for any class, I'm going to go over and swap to, let's say, Rogue DPS. What is our BIS for this phase? It's showing me that it's the leather-working helm, the leather-working shoulders, the cape drop from Sunken Temple, the chest from Sunken Temple, your tier chest, the engineering bracers, the gloves of the Pathfinder from a quest in Timbermaw Hold, which is really nice. So this add-on really will help you out. You don't need to be looking up lists externally outside of Season of Discovery. You can actually check in-game, and then when you hover over items, it'll actually show you, like, let's say I'm hovering over my helmet, right? You see how in the bottom of the tooltip it says best for Paladin DPS and tanks, Warrior DPS and tanks BIS in Phase 2 and Phase 3. So you can see that right there. Same for the shoulders. It's going to show you BIS Phase 3 for Warrior DPS, Warrior tanks, Paladin DPS, Paladin tanks. It's really nice. It's going to show you that pretty much anything in the game, what it's worth to you as your class. Now the next one I want to talk to you about, this is a quick one, and I know it's because a lot of you are sitting there like, what is that he's clicking right there? And that is going to be the minimap button. Where is it? It's right here. You see the name Minimap button. If you want to download it, that's the exact name you would search for on CurseForge. And that gives us this little button with the M right here that we can kind of hold our mouse wheel in and drag it around. I kind of keep it tied to my minimap up here. You left click it and it organizes all of your add-on minimap buttons so that they're not spread all around your map, making for a really congested look. So it's really nice. It keeps everything nice and organized. You can kind of move it anywhere you want on your screen. Like, let's say I wanted to have this up here. I could do that as well. I can move it down here, anywhere you want, but I like to keep it tied to my minimap. The next add-on I want to talk to you guys about is going to be Nova World Buffs. Now, a lot of you may already be using it, and if you are, I'm just curious if you know about this feature that I just learned about, thanks to Blaze and Bob. This feature is this little timer right here. I now have this up permanently. It shows me when Ashen Veil is starting and when Stranglethorn Veil is starting, the Blood Moon event. It's really nice and handy because if you get caught up doing something, you can always kind of glance over at this and see the timers for these events that are going to be starting so you don't forget. Now, aside from that feature, that feature is just a feature you're going to turn on in the options of Nova World Buffs. It's right here. It's called Timers Overlay. But other than that, Nova World Buffs actually tracks your buffs. It'll allow you to look in Felwood at reset timers for Songflower. So if I was in Felwood right now, I would be able to see when these Songflowers are resetting. You can also check the buffs you have on all of your characters. So it'll store that information here and show you where what characters have what buffs. Right here, your Dark Moon Fair buff is off cooldown. So let's say you get your Dark Moon Fair buff and you die and you want to pick it up again before raid. There is that 4-hour cooldown before you can pick it up again. You need to be logged into the game. So you can basically check that here. It'll say like you have 1 hour and 10 minutes left on your Dark Moon Fair buff. So you know what? You go make lunch or make dinner and leave your character logged in to reset that cooldown and be able to pick that buff up again. Aside from that, Nova World Buffs is just great. It also will, if you hover over it, it'll show you the Ashen Veil start time and Stranglethorn start time. But to be completely honest, I really like the fact that it has this timer. This is my favorite feature of Nova World Buffs that I just found out about. Because if you're trying to get exalted with your Warsong rep, or you're trying to farm points in the Blood Moon event, it's really nice to be able to see that timer no matter what you're doing. And you can just kind of glance over at it. You don't have to do anything else. Now, the next one I want to talk to you guys about, let's take a look at it. It's going to be called What's Training. It's spelled exactly like that if you want to search it up in CurseForge. And basically what this add-on does is when you open up your spell book, you're going to get this tab right here under your runes tab, What Can I Train? And it's going to show you what abilities are coming up in your train. This is really helpful while you're leveling, especially if you're doing a dungeon grind from 50 to 60 with a group of people. You can kind of check and see if it's worth going back and training or if it's worth it to just push the next 2 levels and get to that next level of abilities that you're unlocking. Sometimes it's worth it and sometimes it is not. But as you can see right here in my spellbook on the left-hand side, at level 52, I'm going to be able to train Battle Shout rank 6, Intercept rank 3, and Shield Bash rank 3. And then at 54, we're getting Demoralizing Shout, Hamstring, Mortal Strike rank 3, Revenge, rank 5, and Slam, rank 4, all the way up to 60. It'll show you, if like right now I'm Arm Spec, I'm not Fury, so it's showing that if I was Fury, this is what I'd be able to get at 54 and 60, and Shield Slam I would be at 54 and 60 if I was Prot. So this is a really, really helpful add-on while leveling, even from 1 to 60. It kind of saves you a lot of time instead of going back and picking up skills that really might not even be worth it or make your leveling any faster. Now, this next one that I want to talk to you guys about is going to be called Weapon Swing Timer. This is it right here if you want to take a look at it. And what this does is it's going to give you basically a weapon swing indicator, showing you the time between your main hand, your offhand, or your two-handed swing, or if you're a hunter, your ranged attacks. I'm going to unequip my sword right here so that we don't one-shot these mobs, just so you can see. You can customize exactly how it looks. I have no text on it. I have no timer. I just have the bar going. So this is what it looks like when I'm attacking my mob, right? So it'll show you when that bar resets, that's when your next auto attack is going off. So for warriors especially, this is really important because it allows us to cue heroic strikes very easily. For hunters, it's really good to be able to not miss a single auto attack, and you can customize the color. You can add text on top of it. You can do so many different things. I'll show you guys as soon as we take down this Murloc right here. If we go into our add-ons, options, add-ons, where is it? Weapon swing timer. We're going to go to the melee settings. I have it colored brown because I'm a warrior. We could show text on it as well. Let's show the left and the right text. I'll show you guys what that looks like. It'll give you like a little bit of a timer and tell you that it is your, see it says main hand, and then it's showing you the timer countdown. Basically your weapon swing speed, which is really, really nice. And this is extremely useful, especially if you're starting to raid or do PvP moving into this next phase. So the next one that I want to talk to you guys about is one that really, sticks true to me that I've been using for over 15 years at this point, and this is going to be Leatrix Plus. Let me find it right here so you guys can see. That's how it is spelled if you do want to search it up and install it. Leatrix Plus is great. It has so many different features, and people use it.
Welcome to the Skullman's in-depth dungeon guide for both Horde and Alliance. As always, timestamps for quests, complex trash pulls, and bosses and their respective loots can be found in the comments below. There are a large amount of pre-rate best-in-slot items found within this dungeon, so I'll review every item of note with the corresponding class and specs icon. Skullman's is an academy for necromantic arts created by Kel'Thuzad to bolster the armies of undead. The halls of the academy are infested by the Rod of the Scourge and what remains of the Baroff family, who gave their castle, crypts, and lives for the Lich King's blessing of immortality. Skullman's can be found in the southeast corner of the Western Plaguelands and should be completed by everyone, not only because it has amazing items, quests, and aesthetics, but because it's the best dungeon in the game, at least in my opinion. The halls are crowded with mobs, making Skullman's one of the better places to grind out experience or gold as a group. A fair portion of the mobs within the dungeon are immune to all magic besides holy, so I can strongly recommend a paladin tank as well as a priest for damage. As always, crowd control is necessary, so bring a rogue or a mage. I'd recommend bringing an off tank, as some pulls can get quite challenging, as well as some bosses. But if you believe your tank is competent or has fantastic gear, this can be bypassed. The recommended levels are 57 to 60. You can enter the dungeon as early as level 45, although I wouldn't really recommend doing so. Expect to sink in at least 2 hours here, but this can vary based on your group's experience. Before I jump into our quests, we'll need to create the key to enter the dungeon. Both factions will need 15 gold and 2 thorium bars, so make sure you have those on hand before starting the quest line. As Alliance, pick up Call to Arms from Crier Goodman and Stormwind, found patrolling throughout the city. This quest will send us to Commander Ashlam Valorfist on the border of Western Plaguelands in Altaric Mountains. Ashlam will offer us the follow-up, Clear the Way, which will require us to kill 10 skeletal flayers and 10 slavering ghouls, just to the east in Sorrow Hill. Next up, Ashlam will give us All Along the Watchtowers. This quest tasks us with marking 4 watchtowers found in Anderhall. Stand at the door and use the torch and it should reward completion. Upon returning to Ashlam, he'll give us Skullman's, which requires you to talk to Alchemist Arbington, found a few steps away. Arbington will give us skeletal fragments, which will require us to collect 15 skeletal fragments from any skeleton mob in Anderhall. These have an 80% drop chance, so they shouldn't be too difficult to acquire. Arbington will now give us Mold Rhymes with, which sends us down to Gadgetson to speak with Crinkle Goldsteel. Make sure you have 15 gold on hand, otherwise Crinkle will turn us away. Upon paying Crinkle, he'll give us Fire Bloom Forged. sending us to the top of the fire plume volcano in the center of the Ungoro crater. Use the skeleton key mold by the lava and create the unfinished key, then head back to Alchemist Arbington in Western Plaguelands. Arbington will now give us Araj's Scarab, tasking us with collecting the signet from the Scolomance's former leader, Araj. I'd recommend doing this quest as a party, as Araj can be quite tough, especially considering all of the patrols and stationary mobs found around him in Anderhall. Turning the quest into Arbington will open up one final quest from Ashlim. Speak with him and he'll give you the skeleton key, granting you access to Scholomance. As Horde, in Undercity, we can pick up Call to Arms, Western Plaguelands, from Harbinger Balthazad. Head to the Bulwark, found in the far east of the Tirisfal Glades, on the border with Western Plaguelands, and speak with High Executioner Darrington. Darrington will give us Scarlet Diversions, which sends us into the Plaguelands to destroy a Scarlet camp found here, and plant a banner over the burned remains. Before you walk off to do this quest, pick up the Bottle of Flame found by the crate near Darrington. Once completed, Darrington will give us All Along the Watchtowers. This quest tasks us with marking 4 towers found in Anderhall. Stand at the door and use the torch and it should reward completion. Upon our return, Darrington will send us a few steps away to speak with Apothecary Dithers, with the quest Scholomance. Dithers will give us skeletal fragments, which requires us to collect 15 skeletal fragments from any skeleton mob in Anderhall. These have about an 80% drop chance, so they shouldn't be too difficult to acquire. Dithers will now give us Old Rhymes with, which sends us down to Gadget City to speak with Crinkle Gold. Make sure you have 15 gold on hand, otherwise Crinkle will turn us away. Upon paying Crinkle, will give us Fire Plume Forge, sending us to the top of the Fire Plume volcano in the center of the crater. Use the skeleton key mold by the lava and create the unfinished key, and then head back to Alchemist Dithers in Western Plaguelands. Dithers will now give us Araj's Scarab, tasking us with collecting the signet from the Scolomance's former leader, Araj. I'd recommend doing this quest as a party, as Araj can be quite tough, especially considering all of the patrols and stationary mobs found around him in Anderhall. Turning the quest into Dithers will open up one final quest from Darrington. Speak with him and he'll give us the skeleton key, granting you access to Scholomance. Alternatively, a rogue can pick the lock if they have over 280 skill. Both Alliance and Horde have one quest each. Starting off with Horde, we have Barov Family Fortune, given to us by Alexei Barov in the Bulwark. Alexei wants us to collect his 4 family deeds from the dungeon. The first can be found here, the second here, the third here, and the final one here. The follow-up quest rewards an incredible trinket, so I'd recommend everyone to do it. Just be warned, it's a bit difficult, so you might need a party. Alliance have the same quest, but offered from Weldon Barrel, who can be found in Chilwend Camp. Weldon tasks us with collecting his 4 family deeds from Scholomance. The first can be found here, the second here, the third here, and the final one here. The follow-up quest rewards an incredible trinket, so I'd recommend everyone to do it. Just be warned, it's a bit difficult, so bring a party. Our first neutral quest is quite a lengthy one, so I'd recommend starting this far before you plan on coming into the dungeon. From Tinky's Steam Boil in Flamethirst, we can pick up Broodling Essence. This quest sends us to zap whelplings found all throughout the Burning Steppes. Once you're done zapping, Tinky will send us up to Everlook to speak with her friend, Felnock's Steel Spring. After we meet with Felnock, he'll send us off to collect 8 uncracked Chilwyn horns from the chimeras found roaming all throughout Winterspring. Return to Felnock and he'll send us back to Tinky. Now we'll have to return to Everlook. Felnock will offer us a new quest, sending us back to Tinky once again. At this point I'm starting to think Blizzard created this quest simply to waste our time. But anyways, we head back to Tinky because we really want this quest done. Returning to Tinky will give us a quest for the Upper Blackrock Spire. You won't have to delve too deep into the dungeon, so you might be able to get a 5-man together to quickly complete this quest. Once we reach the Rookery, use the Exceloscope prototype on any of the eggs, then head back to Tinky. At long last, Tinky will send us to Light's Hope Chapel with the quest Leonid Bartholomew. And if you haven't noticed by now, Tinky is actually working for the Scourge. Anyways, Leonid thanks us for helping him trick Tinky and sends us outside to speak with Bettina Bigglesink. Bettina will give us the final quest of the chain, Dawn's Gambit, which sends us into Scholomance and tasks us with placing down Dawn's Gambit inside of the viewing room, where the necromancers are being trained. Do not stay in the room once it's placed, as although it will kill all of the students, they'll come back as skeletons. To finish up the quest, we'll also need to take care of Vectis. Kill him and we're all set. Continuing with Bettina, she'll also offer Plagued Hatchlings, which requires us to kill 20 of the Plagued Dragonling Hatchlings found above Rattlemore's pit. Once you turn the quest in and return to the dungeon, if you kill the Hatchlings again, they have a chance to drop a healthy dragon scale. Accepting the quest will send us back to Bettina for some extra experience. The remainder of our quest can be picked up in the keep outside of Scolomance's entrance. We can find the ghost of Eva Sarkov, the Barov family's head maid, by the castle. Eva gives us the quest, Dr. Theolin Krasnov the Butcher, which tasks us with killing Krasnov, the man responsible for the torture of Eva and her husband. Once he's defeated, make sure you burn Eva and her husband's remains to complete the remainder of the quest. Eva will then give us the follow-up, Krasnov's Bag of Horrors. This portion of the quest tasks us with returning to the Scholomance, killing Jandis Barov in the crypts, and returning with Krasnov's Bag of Horrors. Eva will offer us one last quest, Gertonos the Herald. This quest will give us the opportunity to summon a secret boss early on in the dungeon. If we use the Blood of Innocence on the brazier on the balcony found in the second area, we can summon Gertonos the Herald. Slay Gertonos and return to Eva. Our final quest can be picked up with the trinket we received from Eva's previous quest. Equipping the Spectral Essence will reveal the ghostly denizens of Daromir, the keep around the Scholomance. You'll see Magistrate Martin present with our final questline, beginning with the human Raz Frostwhisper. This quest will send us a few zones down into the Arathi Highlands, where we'll be tasked with searching for the book, Keepsake of Remembrance, found in the various areas of Stormguard. Once we return to Marduk with the book, he'll give us the follow-up, the dying Raz Frostwhisper, sending us to Light's Hope Chapel to bring the tattered book to Leonid Bartholomew. Leonid will tell us the story of Raz, and task you with taking the book upon the unholy ground found within Stratholme. You'll need to complete Stratholme, which is easier said than done, and take the book to Rivendare's crypt, where you'll be able to click on the symbol found on the ground. The symbol gives you a follow-up, which just sends you back to Leonid. Leonid will give us one final quest, sending us back to Marduk with the soul-bound keepsake we've just created. Marduk will finally send us back into Stratholme with the quest, The Lich, Raz Frostwhisper. This quest will require us to head to Raz, found inside of the dungeon, and then use the tome on him to revert him back to his human form. The channel to turn him human takes about 10 seconds, so tanks and healers should let a damage dealer handle this portion. Do this as soon as possible, as he'll heal to full health once he transforms. Complete the fight as normal, and collect his head to complete the quest. As a side note, Paladins and Warlocks must also stop by Scholomance to complete some parts of their Epic Mount questline, as well as a portion of Dungeon Set 2 requiring you to kill a boss found within the dungeon. I won't cover these here as there are plenty of guides out there that cover these questlines. I'll link a few in the description if you particularly came for this information. The first boss we can encounter is the Blood Steward of Gertonos. You'll only need to kill her after you've completed the Gertonos questline to retrieve more blood to summon Gertonos again. The Blood Steward is fairly easy. Often she uses Curse of Impotence and Curse of Weakness, which will afflict the target with the curse that reduces magic damage done and physical damage done respectively. The Steward's final ability is Paralyzing Poison, which will stun her primary target for 8 seconds. This can be dispelled by a druid, but if you didn't bring one, keep the tank healed up and exercise caution if she pulls off of the tank. Otherwise, she's just a simple tank and spank. Coming into the Chamber of Summoning, be careful of the summoners. Focus them down as they'll keep summoning skeletons that will eventually overwhelm you. You'll have to attack the groups on the piles. This room can be quite tough if you chain pull, so use cooldowns if necessary, and focus on killing the summoners before using your area of effect spells. Upon placing the blood on the balcony brazier, Gertonos will fly in. Gertonos has 2 forms. In his human form, he is a caster. The big ability to watch out for here is mind control. Try and crowd control the target to lessen the impact of that class. Gertonos will also cast Shadow Bolt volleys. Interrupt this to lessen shadow damage, but letting 1 or 2 go through will not be the end of the world. The His final spell in his human form is Curse of Tongues, which will increase casting time by 50%. Immediately decurse this if it's on any casters in your party, as it will tremendously decrease damage and healing. At about 75%, Kurtonos will transform into his bat form. In bat form, Kurtonos has a brand new set of skills. You'll want to face him away from your party as he'll wing frog, knocking everyone in front of him backwards. To add on to his frontal cone abilities, he also has swoop, which will cleave as well as stun everyone in front of him for 2 seconds. Kurtonos will also disarm for 10 seconds and pierce armor, which will reduce total armor by 50%. Pop a defensive during this time to negate some of the damage. At 25%, Kurtonos will return to his human form with the same abilities. Burn him down and you'll be rewarded with some pretty great items. In the Barov family crypts, be careful of the risen apparitions as they're immune to all magic damage besides holy. Make sure they're down before you pull more. Also, pay attention to the disease ghouls as they explode on death, dealing damage and leaving a very painful gas cloud. Descending into the family crypts, we can encounter the first member of the Barovs, Jandis. Jandis is noted as being one of the first of the mages who could replicate herself, but we'll get to that after we discuss her first 2 abilities. Dark Plague, which deals contact damage, and then applies a ticking damage over time, and Curse of Blood, which increases physical damage taken by 500. Try and dispel/decurse these, but if you can't, it's not the end of the world. What makes Jandis challenging is that she'll constantly summon illusions of herself. These illusions are immune to area damage, thus, they must be individually targeted if you want them dead. They only have about 2,000 health, so it isn't too much of a hassle to kill them, but your group needs to make a tough decision here. Either focus Jandis down if the tank has cooldowns available, or each DPS needs to take responsibility for focusing down her illusions. You can't do both, or you'll most likely be overwhelmed. On the wall by Jandis, we can hit a torch that will give us access to a treasure later on in the dungeon. In the bone pits below the Whelpling room, we can encounter Rattlegore. For the most part, Rattlegore is a tank in Spain, but he has a wall. Rattlegore's most common ability is Strike, which just deals an attack with increased power. Rattlegore will also knock away, which just knocks you back a short distance. Rattlegore's final ability is War Stomp. This ability stuns everyone around him for 5 seconds and knocks back a short distance. If you can, keep your distance. Don't let Rattlegore's few abilities let you think he's easy. He hits incredibly hard. Otherwise, make sure you clear the room of all adds and focus on keeping the tank healed up, and you should have few issues. Rattlegore drops the key to the viewing room, so he must be killed to proceed. The pit before the viewing room has the same mobs as we saw in Jandis' crypt. Be extremely careful if you're in melee range, as all of the gas hitting you at once will probably end your life. In the pit before the viewing room, if you hit the torch in Jandis' crypt, you'll have access to a small treasure. It doesn't drop anything fantastic, so it isn't necessary to collect. Next up, we encounter a room full of up-and-coming necromancers, their teacher Vectis, and his guard, Marduk Blackpool. The students are not hostile, but if you attack Vectis, they will all turn on you. Thus, to avoid this, area of effect the students to aggro them. Proceed to clear out the room, but be wary of pulling Vectis or Marduk. Once the room is clear, you can pull Marduk on his own. Just steer clear of Vectis. Thus, cut the far wall. Space Marduk away from the party, as he'll cleave. Comboed with the damage of his Shadow Bolt volley, this could easily cause a wipe. Marduk passively has Defiling Word, which decreases shadow resistance by 100. There's no way to avoid this, so just keep this in mind. Marduk's final ability is Shadow Shield, which gives him a damage absorb, which returns shadow damage. Just fight through this, or purge it if available to your turn. Otherwise, Marduk is quite easy on his own. Moving on to Vectis, he's also quite easy, and he's fairly squishy. Spread your group out, as Vectis will periodically place down flame strikes. Run out of the fire if this is placed on you. Vectis' other ability is Blast Wave, which does fire damage around him. If you're able to be at a range, do so to avoid this damage. Otherwise, it's something melee will have to deal with. Besides that, he's fairly easy. If we go through the further door, we can encounter the Lich, Ras Frostwhisper. All of Ras's damage is frost. As such, frost resistance prevails here, but isn't necessary. Ras loves to stun, especially with his most common ability, Freeze. Freeze will stun everyone in front of Ras for 10 seconds and deal a frost damage tick every few seconds. Face him away from the party or this could be disastrous. Also quite commonly, Ross will use Chill Nova, which knocks everyone around Ross back a very short distance and slows them for quite a bit. Ross will use a Frostbolt volley. If you see his hands turn blue, interrupt him immediately. Lastly, Ross will Fear. As usual, use Fear Wards or Tremor Totem if available. Otherwise, decurse. Passively, Ras has Frost Armor, which will slow enemies to attack him by 40% and double their time between attacks. Sorry Mila, you can't really avoid this one. As long as Ras doesn't stun the party with the freeze, it's quite easy. Try not to skip him as he drops plenty of best in slot items. If you're an alchemist and you came for the alchemy lab, it can be found in Ras's room. If we run through the doorway closest to the viewing room entrance, we enter a 2-story level of 6 crypts. Turning right on the upper level, we can enter Instructor Militia's crypt. Clear out the admin's crypt. Be wary as the occultists turn into shades, which cannot be damaged by physical attacks. Casters will need to clear these quickly as you won't be able to proceed without killing them off. As for Militia, she's fairly simple. She has 2 shadow damage over time abilities, Corruption, which just does ticking damage, and Call of the Great, which will do a large shadow damage tick after 60 seconds. This should be the curse to avoid the burst damage. Militia also has a slew of heals. Interrupt when possible to make the fight slightly easier. Lastly, Militia will cast Slow. This really doesn't affect the fight, and does exactly what you think it does. Militia and the rest of the bosses in the crypts drop quite a few items at a 1% drop rate. There isn't nearly enough screen space to show this, thus I've linked their drops in the description below. Following the crypt around, we can encounter Theolin Krasnov. Theolin is a tank in Spain. He isn't particularly difficult, but he does hit quickly, but not for very high amounts. Theolin's most common ability is Rend, dealing a moderate physical damage over time. Theolin will also backhand fairly often, which just stuns the primary target for 2 seconds. At 30% health, Theolin will enrage, causing him to attack 60% quicker. Tanks can use a minor defensive here, but the damage shouldn't be more than you could deal with. This fight is quite trivial, so don't let his title scare you. The final room on the upper level holds Polkelt and a small army of corpses. Try and keep away from them, as when they die they do a burst of damage. Polkelt himself is incredibly easy as long as you stay spread apart. His most worrisome ability is Volatile Infection. This will release a 500 damage tick around the target. Keep away from this person and cleanse them if you can. This combos with Polkelt's Noxious Catalyst, which reduces nature damage resistance by nearly 100. The tank should be wary of the Lorekeeper's Corrosive Acid, as it will reduce your armor by 960, which equates to about 4% more damage taken depending on your armor levels. As long as you stay spread out, this should be an easy fight. Heading down to the bottom level, in the first room to the right, you can encounter the Ravinian. The slumbering cadaver has a massive health. Hit your tank quite hard, as a Sundering Cleave reduces their armor by a massive amount. The Ravinian needs to be faced away from your party, as a Sunder hits everyone in front of him. He also has a normal cleave, which just does physical damage in front of him, but it'll probably kill you if you think it's a good idea to stand with the tank. He'll also knock you back, but this shouldn't be concerning if you're facing a wall. Lastly, the Ravinian tramples. This just does minor nature damage around him. It hits for about 1,000, so watch your health, but it shouldn't be too much of an issue. This fight can be a small gear check for the tank and healer, so don't slip up. Next up, we have Alexei Berov and his skeletal guards. Alexei is one of the harder bosses in the dungeon. Nuke his guards down as quickly as possible, as their physical damage is fairly high. As for Alexei, his most worrisome ability is this Unholy Orb. This will tick for 150 shadow damage every 2 seconds for the remainder of the fight. The only way to avoid this is to keep your distance from the boss. Tanks should bring a Shadow Protection Potion to lessen the damage the healer needs to work through. Paladins also come in handy here, as they have their Shadow Resistance one. Even more worrisome is Alexei's Veil of Shadow. This curse reduces the victim's healing received by 75%. If you aren't topped off when you receive this, you're probably dead. This needs to immediately be decursed. If for whatever reason you came in here without someone to decurse, pop your cooldowns. Alexei's final ability is Immolation. This just does minor fire damage over time and is the least concerning of his abilities. Stay focused here and don't rage at your teammates if things go wrong. This is not an easy fight, but with persistence you will persevere. At long last, we have the final crypt with Lady Alucia Barrow. Elucia can be a bit of a challenge, but if you beat Alexia, you shouldn't have too much trouble. Keep your distance from Elucia, as she'll cast a 10-second silence in a pretty large area around here. I'm talking primarily to you, healers. Elucia will also mind control. Crowd control this target to make the fight easier on your party. Elucia's last nuisance spell is Fear. Unless you have a priest to dispel magic, you'll be stuck on this for about 20 seconds. Consider wearing a PvP trinket here to clear the fear unless you're a shaman, hunter, or warrior, as being knocked out of the fight for 20 seconds is quite detrimental. As for her damage abilities, Elucia will just deal a Shadow Shock, which deals a burst of shadow damage, and she also has a Curse of Agony, which will deal a bit over 1,000 damage over a period of 24 seconds. Once Elucia has been brought down, school is officially in session.
School is in session.
Once every boss in the crypt is cleared, Dark Master Ganling will appear. Positioning is quite important during this fight. You'll want to tank Ganling in the center of the room, and all range should be in the upper levels attacking downwards. Let's cover Ganling's abilities before we hit what really makes him a difficult boss, besides his massive health pool. Ganling will auto-attack fairly hard and cast arcane missiles. When you see his hands glowing, interrupt him to reduce the damage taken. Ganling will also periodically use Curse of the Dark
What's your
Master.
name? Where you from?
This curse will reduce your health by 500 and your strength by 50. Decurse this if possible, otherwise, if you're a warrior, just cry softly into your keyboard. Ganling's final ability is Shadow Shield, which just gives him a bubble absorbing physical and magic damage. What makes this encounter difficult is Ganling's teleport. Every so often, Ganling will send a single party member into one of the rooms around him. The victim will have to fight their way through 3 mobs to be freed from the room. Healers should have some damaging abilities on their bar to get through this. The mobs aren't incredibly difficult, but can kill players if they're not prepared. If your tank is sent into one of the rooms, the healer should be ready to tap to whoever takes aggro. If your healer gets sent in, someone should off-heal or the tank will need to use cooldowns. If you didn't utilize cooldowns in Alexi's room, this is the place to use them. Focus on interrupts and fight your way out of the room as quickly as possible, and that'll be the end of Ganling. Ganling drops a ton of best in slot items, so your efforts will be rewarded. And that was it for Skullomance. Thanks for watching, and as always, I appreciate your support, and I'll see you in 2 days once Classic launches.
paltry. You cannot command me. Your fate will be the same.
Welcome to the Stratholme in-depth dungeon guide for both Horde and Alliance. Stratholme consists of two wings, living and dead. This video will include a guide for the undead section and will be timestamped accordingly below, along with complex trash pulls, quests, and bosses and their according loot drops. Like stated in the living side guide, Stratholme is the host for the beginnings of the Plague of Undeath. Kel'Thuzad chose it as his capital when Arthas was called back to Northrend. Now, with the largest Scourge army in the entirety of Lordaeron, Baron Revendare coordinates the Lich King's plans from his ziggurat. Kel'Thuzad has rotted the area away with buildings that ooze an orange mist that poisons all the surrounding living creatures, transforming them into servants of the Scourge. Some even consider Stratholme to be the most dangerous place on Azeroth outside of Northrend. Once again, the streets are littered with undead, so the more area of effect you have, the better. I'd also highly recommend a good off healer here, especially if your group isn't well geared. There's a time trial in the dungeon, so bringing a class that has great single target bursts, like a rogue, is a good idea here. Any healer and tank will do just fine, but know that paladin tanks and priests have an advantage here. The ideal level range is 58 to 60, but you can enter as early as level 45. The swing is a bit shorter, so you should expect to be here for around an hour tops, but it could be longer if your group is having trouble. Before we can head in, we must first obtain the key. This can easily be picked up by killing Magistrate Barthalos over on the living side. Just be aware that he can run to the far corner of the undead side as well. Once you have the key, you can either proceed on through the dungeon into the undead quarters, or take the service gate on the outside, found here. Of both factions, Horde is the only one that has a quest in this wing. From an incredibly rude Nathanos Blightcaller, we can pick up the Ranger Lord's Behest. This quest sends us off to kill 8 of the varying types of High Elves in Kel-Lithian, and to grab their registry. Return to Nathanos and take his follow-up, Duskwing How I Hate Thee, which will send us out to kill Dustwing and collect a piece of his pelt. Dustwing can be quite tough, so don't take him too lightly. At last, Nathanos will give us Ramstein, which will send us inside of the dungeon to kill Ramstein and collect his head as a souvenir for Nathanos. Before I jump into our neutral quests, know that more quests do open up in the dungeon in later phases, such as those that upgrade our dungeon set. I'll be making a video on those when the appropriate phase is ready for launch. Otherwise, our first quest begins from Leonid Bartholomew. Leonid gives us the Houses of the Holy, which requires us to collect 5 holy waters from the wooden crates found all throughout Stratholme. This holy water can also be used to deal area of effect damage, so feel free to collect them even after you've completed the quest. Next up, from Bettina Bigglesink, we can pick up The Flesh Does Not Lie. This quest requires us to collect 20 flesh samples from the ghouls within the dungeon. This quest may take a few runs to complete, so don't expect to finish it on your first go unless you're the only person in the party with it. Once we return to Bettina, she'll give us the follow-up, The Active Agent. While clearing the 3 ziggurats found within the dungeon, keep an eye out for a tiny container, which will contain our quest item. I'd recommend finishing this quest as quickly as possible, as it makes farming Scourge Stones much easier. Our final quest, Above and Beyond, begins from Duke Nicholas Varenhoff. This quest will only be available if you've completed the quest for obtaining Balnazar's head, and will require you to collect Baron Rivendell's head. Pretty plain and simple. There's also a quest to save the caged woman near Rivendell, but this does not become active until phase 5. Let's hop into our bosses with our first and only rare, Stonespine. Stonespine patrols around the entrance area and is a fairly easy boss. He comes with one ability, and that's Vicious Rend, which will do a fairly minor damage over time. Stonespine is a very simple tank and spank. If you see him, congrats, because he drops some pretty nice items. For our following 3 bosses, once you've killed them, you'll need to enter the ziggurats behind them and clear out all of the acolytes. If you fail to do this, you won't be able to enter the final courtyard. Guarding our first ziggurat, we can encounter Baroness Anastari. Anastari can be quite an annoying boss. While she doesn't dish out too much damage, her kit was made to annoy. Her first ability is Banshee's Curse, which will reduce your chance to hit by 10%. This only lasts for 12 seconds, so decursing it isn't necessary, but do so if possible. Her most frequent ability is Banshee Wail, which will just deal minor shadow damage. What makes her a real nuisance is her Possess, in which she'll mind control a target for a total of 2 minutes. The only way to break the target out is if you get them to half health. If the person who receives the mind control is vital to your party, everyone needs to break them out as soon as possible. Mind you, their health is doubled during this period. Her final ability is Silence. Tank should aim to keep her away from the rest of the party, as this will silence everyone in an area around the Baroness. As long as you're in control of the mind controls, this should be an easy fight. Once you've killed the Baroness, if you have a blacksmith in your group, the bottom half of the advanced armor smithing volume is just to her right. Be warned that you'll be attacked by a mini-boss by the name of Blackguard Swordsmith, but he does nothing of note. Heading west to our second ziggurat, we find Neruben Khan. Neruben Khan can be quite frustrating for tanks due to his most common ability, Encasing Webs, which will not only immobilize the tank, but also increase the time between their attacks by 100% for 6 seconds. This will make generating rage quite difficult, so be prepared to time your taunts appropriately. Our 8-limbed foe will also summon scarabs quite often. Although they aren't incredibly threatening, it's recommended that you use Area of Effect to clear these out, as they can overpower the group. Neruben Khan's final ability is Pierce Armor, which will reduce the user's armor by 50% for 20 seconds. This isn't all too dangerous, but it can cause your tank to take a bit more damage if everything is wailing on them. Smush the bug, and we can move on to our final ziggurat. Our last ziggurat is guarded by Malachi the Pallid. Malachi can be interesting, but isn't all too challenging. Quite frequently, Malachi uses Frostbolt, which will do frost damage and slow. Malachi will also use Drain Life. Interrupt this if he has multiple available, otherwise, if you're limited with your interrupts, save them for his mana drain, as if he burns your healer of their mana, things won't turn out too well. Malachi's final and most dangerous ability is Ice Cube, which will stun the tank for 10 seconds. As long as the healer has mana and focus heals the person to take over aggro, this ability should be nothing to worry about. Overall, Malachi is quite easy. Clearing the last ziggurat will open the way into the final courtyard. Make sure everyone is inside before you start clearing out the abominations, and take them one at a time as they do a good chunk of damage. Upon killing the final abomination, Ramstein the Gorger will emerge from the large crypt. Ramstein is one of the harder bosses in this wing of Stratholme. Passively, Ramstein will increase his own attack speed by 30% when he scores a critical strike. Just be prepared for a very large chunk of burst when this happens, as he already hits fairly hard. Ramstein will also trample every few seconds. This basically cleaves everyone around him. If you are in a melee class, keep your distance to avoid this. Ramstein's most dangerous ability is his knockout, which will knock back and stun the tank for 6 seconds. During this time, Ramstein's threat will reset and he'll choose a new target. Either be ready to heal up his new target or kite him. I'd personally prefer to kite him if your group isn't well geared, since it's not uncommon for him to smack someone's health away. Once the tank is done with his 6 seconds, he'll need to return and taunt Ramstein off. Healers should do their absolute best to keep their distance from him. If you can manage the damage, this should prove to be an easy fight. Just be careful, as once he goes down, a small army of skeletons will appear and assault your group. At last, the crypt will open up. Clear out the Blackguard, and you can finally face off against the Scourged Horseman, Baron Rivendare. Baron Rivendare can be quite challenging. Area of Effect excels here, as Rivendare will create skeletal minions from the bone piles. These have fairly low health, so make sure they go down quickly, as Rivendare can sacrifice them with his Dark Pact to regain some of his health. Rivendare also comes with a small array of Area of Effect damage. Tank should face him away from the party as he'll cleave. To top this off, he also has an Unholy Aura, which does 150 damage every 2 seconds. Although this seems minimal, it will add up and take its toll on your healer's mana pool as the fight goes on. Rivendare also uses the Shadow Bolt, dealing minor shadow damage. His most dangerous ability is his Mortal Strike, which will cut your tank's healing received by 50%. The debuff only lasts for 5 seconds, so to avoid the dangers of this, keep your tank topped off instead of letting them dip down. Stay in control of his skeletons, position him well, use cooldowns appropriately, and you should get him down with ease. Maybe you'll even get lucky and get his mount. Otherwise, that was it for Stratholme. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.
What happened to your friend that him to fight? Who dare summon me?
What brings you here? Good luck, friend.
In this tale, we are going to focus on an area of Azeroth that boasts some of the finest lore ever written in World of Warcraft. We are travelling to the northern reaches of the Eastern Kingdoms to uncover the history of the Plague Lands, covering the entire lore of the zone, including the stories of Stratholme, Scholomance, the Knights of the Silver Hand, and the battle for Light's Hope Chapel. The Plague Lands were once a thriving and beautiful region of Azeroth. The lively city of Stratholme lay to the north, while the surrounding areas were filled with small towns, villages, and a close-knit community that farmed the land to sustain the Grand Kingdom of Lordaeron, known previously as Eastwood. This lush area provided its inhabitants with either the peace and harmony that a simple farming life offered, or for those seeking a faster-paced lifestyle, there was always the hustle and bustle of the grand city of Stratholme. However, as we know today, this idyllic image of this area is a far cry from its current harsh reality. In this tale, we will uncover the true history of Stratholme and these appropriately named Plagued Lands. Situated at the very heart of the once great kingdom of Lordaeron, Eastwood occupied the land between the Tirisfal Glades to the west, the hinterlands to the south, and the forested area to the north known as Crossroads. However, this human-dominated region of Azeroth appeared vastly different in the past. The origins of these plagued lands trace back thousands of years to the beginnings of the human tribes. Nearly 2,800 years before the events of the Dark Portal, the High Elves of Crossroads found themselves locked in perpetual conflict with the native and dominating Amari trolls. These moss-skinned trolls, known for their ability to regenerate limbs and heal injuries, were a savage and malevolent race. With their empire sprawling across the vast majority of northern Lordaeron, the trolls fiercely defended their borders against any perceived threats. Meanwhile, the scattered human tribes of Lordaeron waged internal battles for supremacy over their respective lands. Amidst the chaos, the Arathi tribe recognized the growing menace posed by the trolls and sought to unify the disparate human tribes against their common enemy. Through 6 years of cunning strategy and military prowess, the Arathi gradually subjugated rival tribes, including the human tribes from the Alterac Mountains and from the Tirisfal Glades, offering peace and equality to the conquered in exchange for their loyalty. The humans of Tirisfal, led by the great warrior Lordaeron, were more refined than the savage mountain tribes. Deeply religious, they performed rituals at shrines and revered Tyr's silver hand, often wearing its image as pendants. Unlike the Alterac, they resisted force and required the leader of the Arathor nation, Thoradin, to appeal to their beliefs to gain their loyalty. Thoradin made a pilgrimage to Tirisfal's sacred sites and pledged to adopt and spread their religious practices. He sealed this promise by cutting his palm and mixing his blood with the earth declaring, "Between our people, let this be young blood we spill." The Tirisfal humans then joined him, with Lordain becoming one of his generals. Lordain's sister, Merelda, was among the first followers of the Holy Light, which the Arathi adopted and eventually leading to the Church of the Holy Light years later. The culmination of the Arathi's efforts was the establishment of Strom, a mighty fortress city in southern Lordaeron and the capital of the newly formed Arathor nation. Rumours of the elves' plight reached Strom, prompting Thoradin to realise the true extent of the troll threat. Desperate for aid, elven ambassadors arrived, seeking military assistance against the troll armies. The king accepted, and the war against the trolls began. During the final days of the Troll Wars, as King Thoradin and his forces retreated to Alterac Fortress, the Amani rapidly gained ground, threatening to flank and overwhelm Arathor's armies. To prevent disaster, General Lordain volunteered to hold back the forest trolls, knowing he would not survive. Lordain and his warriors died fighting, but their sacrifice secured victory for Arathor and Quel'Tha loss. After the Troll Wars, many of Arathor's soldiers migrated back to the fertile lands of Tirisfal, where they established a central stronghold and renamed the region Lordaeron in Lordain's honour. Similar to what we see in the southern expanse of the Eastern Kingdoms, where the Kingdom of Stormwind thrives on the hard work of those farming the lands, Elwyn Forest, Westfall, and at that time Brightwood, and beyond, Eastweald served as the equivalent for the Kingdom of Lordaeron, the city being built on the hard work of the surrounding community, who farmed the fertile soils to feed the expanding population. As the population grew, humans began to spread their influence into the surrounding lands. In this region, several towns and villages emerged from old fortresses that were built during the war with the trolls. Some of these include Anderhall, Arthglen, and Caer Darrow in the western side of Eastweald, and then Darrowshire, Corrie's Crossing, and Tyr's Hand on the eastern side. At this moment in time, the population of the area was governed by the newly established city of Stratton, which had quickly become the second largest city in Lordaeron in the years that followed the Troll Wars. The people of Eastweald not only looked to the Kingdom of Lordaeron and the governing city of Stratholme for leadership, but also devoted themselves to the new emerging religion, the worship of the Holy Light. The Holy Light can be briefly described as an endless, shimmering sea of energy situated outside the barriers of reality. It is one of the two most fundamental forces in the universe, along with the Void. The people of Eastweald built Light's Hope Chapel in the easternmost reaches of the region, using it as their main place of worship. This makes Light's Hope Chapel one of the oldest and most revered holy sites for the humans. Since the days of the Troll Wars, the humans of Lordaeron had not faced such a formidable force again. However, true to their nature, they constructed fortresses to ensure that they were prepared for any future invasions. One of these fortresses was Caer Darrow. Located on a small island in the middle of Eastweald, on the surface, it appeared to be a typical human stronghold, meant to protect the kingdom's people. But this was far from the truth. It secretly housed an ancient High Elven runestone. A few thousand years prior, shortly after Quel'Tha was founded, many High Elves became concerned that their use of arcane magic might once again attract the Burning Legion to Azeroth as it had during the War of the Ancients. To address this, Dath Ramar Sunstrider tasked his most powerful arcanists with finding a solution. They devised a plan to create a protective barrier called Ban Denorial, known in our tongue, the Gatekeeper, around their land. This barrier would conceal their magic from others, deter their superstitious Amani rivals, and diminish the magic of all non-elves within its bounds. Over several decades, the Arcanists constructed a series of monolithic runestones along the borders of Quel'Tha to define the barrier's limits. These runestones were powered by the Sunwell and linked to the mother tree, Thassalar, combining the tree's natural magic with the elves' arcane spells. One of these runestones was located on the island of Caer Darrow. This leads us smoothly into our next chapter, which delves into the lore of this area during the Second War. Fast forwarding through time, the humans of Lordaeron lived peacefully for thousands of years, farming the land, devoting themselves to the Holy Light, and supporting the kingdom. However, everything changed drastically in the year 0, Medivh. the corrupted guardian of the realm, joined forces with an otherworldly warlock named Warlock. Together, they opened the Dark Portal in the Black Morass, located in the southern reaches of the continent. This event would alter the history of Azeroth forever. The Orcish horde from the planet Draenor poured through the Dark Portal, decimating human settlements in the south and sparking the First War. The humans of the Kingdom of Stormwind battled the Orcish horde for years before being overrun, ultimately losing their grand city. And Lothar, known as the Lion of Stormwind, and a knight champion during the First War, made a desperate bid to save his people. He led the remaining population north by sea from Stormwind Harbour, seeking refuge in the lands of Lordaeron. In the 4th year after the Orcish horde's arrival, Lothar and the people of Stormwind reached Lordaeron. Meanwhile, in the south, empowered by their victory over the humans of Stormwind, the horde prepared for their next phase of the invasion, aiming to conquer the entire continent. Their next targets were the lands of Khazmodan and then Lordaeron. This phase, known in the history books as the Second War, saw the horde surging northward, establishing a grand base of operations at Blackrock Mountain. The horde launched 2 major assaults. The southern offensive swept through the dwarven lands of Khazmodan, conquering most of the region except for the dwarven capital Ironforge and the gnomish capital Novigrad. The northern offensive advanced from the Great Sea, just as Andrew and Lothar traveled. Once they landed, the horde achieved significant success initially, using enslaved red dragons and nearly capturing the capital city of Lordaeron after receiving help from a band of treacherous humans. However, the tide of the war began to turn in the favour of the Alliance due to several factors, one of which was the founding of the Knights of the Order of the Silver Hand. The alliance was made up of various nations, some of which were rivals with differing customs and ways of life. Lothar needed something to unite them, champions who could rally all humans regardless of their origin. The answer came from the Church of the Holy Light. Archbishop Alonsus Fowl met with Lothar. Fowl proposed creating a new order that embodied the best qualities of humanity. Soldiers proficient in wielding the light, skilled in traditional warfare, and exemplifying loyalty, bravery, and honour. With Lothar's consent, and from within Alonsus Chapel, inside the city walls of Stratholme, Fowl and Uther recruited noble knights and priests from Lordaeron to train in the ways of the light and martial combat. The first recruits included Terrell, a priest instrumental in forging the alliance of the Council of Seven Nations, Seder Dathrahan, a man of immense physical strength, Tyrion Fordring, a knight renowned for his zeal and resilience, Uther, an accomplished knight and devout believer who had apprenticed under Fowl, and Gavinrad the Dire, a battle-hardened knight from Stormwind and comrade of Lothar who had fought in the First War. The orcs advanced and reached Eastworld. The island of Kayadara was invaded by the horde, the fortress was sacked, and the sacred runestone was captured. The stone was then split into pieces and would be later used to create the Altars of Storm, arcane structures that allowed Gul'dan to imbue the Horde's older allies with magic. When Uther embarked on a mission of mercy to aid and comfort the survivors of the raid on Kayadara, he was ambushed by privateers from Alterac. In the ensuing naval battle, some of the Alterac soldiers were captured. Under questioning in Lordaeron's capital, they confessed to their nation's treachery against the Alliance and admitted that their kingdom had assisted the Horde in their passage through the mountains. As a result, some paladins joined the Alliance troops led by the High Elf Milan to rescue captured civilians and attack Alterac City, aiming to stop Horde reinforcements from reaching the capital city of Lordaeron. Without these reinforcements and Alterac's support, the Horde struggled, leading to an Alliance victory and the Horde's full retreat back to Khazmodan. The Knights of the Silver Hand played a crucial role in pushing back the Horde, liberating Khazmodan and ultimately forcing the Horde back to the Dark Portal itself. Terrellian led the Alliance's charge against the Orcs' final stronghold, in what became the fiercest and bloodiest battle of the Second War. The Azerothian side of the Dark Portal was destroyed, partly due to the bravery and skill of Uther and the Order of the Silver Hand. Afterward, Terrellian and other paladins rallied the Alliance forces. Facing the Knights' formation, many orcs panicked some fought to the death, others surrendered, and some fled. Thanks to the Knights, the Alliance achieved victory. While the Alliance secured a decisive victory over the Orcish horde, the threat was not entirely eliminated. As mentioned, some of the Orcs scattered across the land, with many being captured by the Alliance. The Alliance of Lordaeron took decisive measures to contain the Orcish threat, constructing several large internment camps in southern Lordaeron. These camps were guarded by both seasoned soldiers and paladins of the Silver Hand, such as Captain Warlock at Durnhold Keep. Despite the tense atmosphere among the captive Orcs, the camp wardens maintained peace and enforced order effectively. As years passed and tensions eased, a lasting peace settled over Lordaeron, with his paladins, the supreme commander of their preserved peace in the kingdom. Meanwhile, his apprentice and the son of the King of Lordaeron, Arthur Menethil, was integrated into the ranks of the Silver Hand through a ceremony at the Cathedral of Light conducted by Archbishop Alonsus Howell. During this period, Tyrion Fordring, Lord of Ardenhold, was overseeing and governing the town of Hearthglen, situated in the northern region of Eastweald. Here, Tyrion encountered an aging orc warrior residing in the ruins of an abandoned watchtower near Hearthglen. Initially enemies, they engaged in combat that caused the tower to collapse. Eitrigg, the orc, ultimately saved the unconscious Tyrion's life by pulling him from the rubble. This act forged a sense of honour, and Tyrion felt like he owed the orc his life. However, this bond did not prevent Eitrigg from later being captured, facing execution in Stratholme. Eitrigg was spared thanks to Tyrion's timely intervention. For his actions against Alliance soldiers, Tyrion was brought to Stratholme to stand trial before a jury, despite being offered freedom in exchange for breaking his vow to the Silver Hand. Tyrion refused. Consequently, Uther had no choice but to excommunicate Tyrion from Lordaeron, forcing him into exile and a life of wandering and seclusion as an outcast. For a decade following these events, Eastweald remained relatively tranquil. The Kingdom of Lordaeron focused on rebuilding its strength and commemorating its triumph over the Horde, striving for a peaceful existence. Unbeknownst to them, though, masterminds of the Burning Legion were plotting global domination once again. Following their defeat in the Second War, the Old Horde's war chief, Ner'zhul, was captured by Kil'jaeden as punishment for his failure. The Deceiver destroyed Ner'zhul's body and tortured his spirit until he agreed to serve the Legion once more. Ner'zhul's soul was then encased in an armour and bound to the frozen throne by Kil'jaeden, who hurled this creation towards Azeroth. It crashed into the Ice-Crown Glacier and essentially giving rise to the Lich King, a pivotal figure later in the Third Wall. Upon arriving on Azeroth, the Lich King seized control of Northrend and began scheming with the necromancer Kel'Thuzad to conquer Azeroth. During this very period, a young orc named Thrall managed to escape from his captivity in Durnhold Keep and began freeing and uniting the Horde under a new banner. A handful of powerful individuals around the world heard the Lich King's mental summons from Northrend, the most notable of them being Kel'Thuzad. He was the first to answer the call. The Lich King was pleased with his latest recruit, promising Kel'Thuzad immortality and great power in exchange for his loyalty and obedience. Disguised, Kel'Thuzad returned to Lordaeron and set up the floating dread citadel of Naxxramas. We'll come back to Naxxramas later on in the story. Over 3 years, he used his wealth and intellect to gather a secretive brotherhood of like-minded men and women, which he then later named the Cult of the Damned. The cult promised its acolytes social equality and eternal life in exchange for their service to Ner'zhul. Kel'Thuzad ensured the cult's activities remained hidden from Lordaeron's authorities. On Kayadaro, Kel'Thuzad struck a deal with the Barov family, allowing some of his cultists to move into the newly formed school of necromancy that was located here. The school would go on to be known to us adventurers as Scholomance. He also persuaded his friend, Baron Rivendare, to join the cult. With Kel'Thuzad's success in Lordaeron, the Lich King made final preparations for his assault on human civilization. Placing plague energies into portable artifacts, called plague cauldrons, Ner'zhul ordered Kel'Thuzad to transport these cauldrons to Lordaeron. The cauldrons were hidden within various cult-controlled villages and served as plague generators, spreading a plague across the farmlands and cities of northern Lordaeron. The Lich King's plan worked perfectly, and many of Lordaeron's northern villages were contaminated almost immediately. Prior to the Third War, Anderhall served as the distribution centre for all agricultural supplies in the northern provinces of Lordaeron. In the 17th year after the events of the Dark Portal, Kel'Thuzad and the Cult of the Damned used it, alongside the small town of Brill in Tirisfal Glades, to spread the plague of undeath by infecting the grain, which was then sent to various northern villages along the King's Road, including Hearthglen and Stratholme. As a result, Anderhall was one of the first places hit by the plague, though it remained free from direct scourge control years later. The people of Eastweald, most still unaware of this insidious plague, consumed the infected grain, unknowingly sealing their tragic fates. The Alliance forces observed a grim metamorphosis taking place in Eastweald as the plague began.
Power to the Forsaken.
Pleased to meet you. You have a great day now. Alrighty then.
Do not waste my time, lesser.
began to ravage the land. Once vibrant and teeming with life, the region now languished as vegetation withered, farms turned desolate, and animals succumbed to the disease. This agonizing transformation marked the beginning of the end for the once prosperous and lush Eastweald. When Prince Arthas Menethil and Jaina Proudmoore arrived in Anderhall to investigate, they found burning buildings but no sign of villagers. Kel'Thuzad suddenly appeared, revealing his identity and his intentions. Determined to stop him, Arthas searched the city for the empty granaries and then pursued the necromancer as he escaped. Heading north and eventually found Kel'Thuzad. The necromancer informed Arthas that he was a servant of a greater power, a dreadlord named Mal'Ganis. Enraged, Arthas vowed to kill Mal'Ganis and slayed the corrupted wizard Kel'Thuzad on the spot.
Naive fool. My death will make little difference in the long run. For now, the scourging of this land begins.
While stationed in Hearthglen, Arthas and Jaina's forces came under attack by hordes of undead. Arthas instructed Jaina to locate Uther while he and his troops defended the town from the scourge, the people of Lordaeron, who had already been infected. It was during this battle that Arthas uncovered the horrifying truth about the plague. Those afflicted didn't just perish, they rose again as undead minions of the scourge. Before being overwhelmed, Uther and his knights arrived in the nick of time, rescuing Hearthglen from destruction. Shortly thereafter, Arthas encountered Medivh, who urged him to journey west to Kalimdor. Despite Jaina's belief in the prophet's warning, Arthas remained steadfast in his conviction to stand by his people and refused to abandon Lordaeron. Together, they pressed on towards Stratholme to confront the looming threat of the Scourge.
Lead them across the sea to the west.
Flee? My place is here, and my only course is to defend my people.
The demon Mal'Ganis specifically targeted Stratholme for its strategic and economic significance as Eastweald's heart, and as a revered site for the birthplace of the Silver Hand Paladin Order. Losing Stratholme to the plague meant losing control of Eastweald itself. As the first undead began to stir in Stratholme, Prince Arthas, accompanied by Uther and Jaina Proudmoore and their soldiers, arrived in Stratholme to find the city already gripped by the plague's horrors. Arthas, driven by grim determination, concluded that purging Stratholme was the only way to prevent it from becoming a bastion of the Scourge.
This entire city must be purged.
What?
He commanded his companions to put down the infected before they could transform into mindless undead. For Arthas, this was a desperate act of mercy and a brutal necessity. Yet, his allies, Jaina, Uther, and their loyal paladins refused to partake in Arthas' merciless purge, viewing his actions as sheer madness.
You lost your mind, Arthas.
Undeterred by their objections, Arthas and a handful of resolute soldiers pressed on with their grim task. Flames soon engulfed the city. Ash and smoke filled the streets, and cries of anguish mingled with the clash of steel and the shattering of bones. Blood flowed freely across the cobblestones as Arthas and his men ruthlessly cut down both the plagued and the undead alike. In the midst of the inferno, Arthas confronted Mal'Ganis, who mocked and goaded him to follow to Northrend before slipping away. With grim resolve, Arthas rallied his forces, who were now going by the name of Death Lords, and departed as the fires consumed what remained of Stratholme's once bustling streets. Days later, upon their return, Jaina and Uther were greeted by a haunting scene, streets littered with lifeless bodies and the charred remnants of what was once a proud city, now reduced to ashes.
So much death. I can't believe Arthas could have done this.
In the southern town of Southshore, Alexandros Mograine, a knight of the Silver Hand, gathered his fellow knights, Isilian, Abendis, Doan, and Fairbanks at the local inn. They convened to discuss an artifact in Mograine's possession and its potential use in halting the Scourge's advance across Lordaeron. Their meeting, however, was interrupted by Lord Commander Saidan Dathrahan. who brought the news of the culling of Stratholme. He also informed them that Arthas's contentious actions led to the suspension of the Silver Hand. Faced with this dire situation, the Assembly had no choice but to continue their mission in secrecy. Mograine then travelled to Ironforge with his artifact, where it underwent a transformation into a weapon designed to avenge the death of King Magni's brother, Muradin Bronzebeard, during his time in Northrend. Upon completing the forging process, Magni acclaimed the weapon as the pinnacle of his craftsmanship. During their stay in Ironforge, the knights received grim news. Arthas had pursued Mal'Ganis to Northrend and returned to Lordaeron as one of the Lich King's Death Knights. This treacherous act culminated in Arthas murdering his own father, King Menethil II, which then ultimately led to the fall of Lordaeron's capital.
Succeeding you, father.
This kingdom shall